The Pats released their initial 53-man roster, and there were plenty of surprises. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I'm your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, also host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and a sports talk show host veteran. On today's episode, I'll give you some names of guys released elsewhere that I think would upgrade this Pats roster. Also, Cutdown Day was another reminder of the miserable failures that led this program to such terrible football. But first, let's talk surprises. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Let's get this out of the way. When we talk about Cutdown Day and the week or two that follows Cutdown Day, we have to understand and embrace the idea that there is fluidity. Lots of fluidity. What we talk about regarding the initial 53-man roster might not stand the test of time and probably won't stand the test of time. Roster changes will happen, but interesting decisions have already been made. And they had to be made by 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon. Let's start here with the wide receivers. We've talked about the wide receivers leading into camp, throughout camp. How many wide receivers would the Patriots keep? Would it be 6? Would it be 7? No, it would be 8. 8 wide receivers made the initial 53-man roster. That is a monstrous number. I had them keeping 7. But they actually kept 8. Javon Baker, wondering if he's on? He's on the initial 53-man. And, when you watch Baker this preseason, I don't think he's on this roster initially because of his great receiving skill. Javon Baker is on this team, at least for now, because of his work in special teams, because he proved to the team that he can be a gunner, because he made 2, 3, 4 impact plays during the preseason on special teams, and that matters. Would Baker be on this team if Marcellus Dial didn't go down with a torn ACL? Probably not. Marcellus Dial was that gunner. But Marcellus Dial is gone, done for the season. You need somebody to fill his spot, and that somebody has been Javon Baker. And he's taken pride on special teams, which does mean something to Mike Vrabel and company. I am not surprised that Javon Baker's on this roster. I had him on this roster. Also not a surprise is that Efton Chisholm III is on this roster. Efton Chisholm made this team during that Minnesota preseason game. There's no doubt in my mind. We talked about it then. I'll just follow up now. He was a roster lock for the initial 53-man as soon as what we saw happened in Minnesota. He dominated that second quarter, that incredible stretch of football during that drive, all the things he showed, the hands, the focus, the toughness, the finish, as Vrabel loves to say, the fit in the McDaniels offense. No surprise, Efton Chisholm III is on this initial 53-man roster. But I am surprised that Kendrick Bourne is also on this 53-man. Kendrick Bourne has not played in weeks. Went down during that scrimmage, that, team scrimmage that they had at Gillette Stadium for the season ticket holders. He went down that night, on that Friday night. That's weeks ago. And Kendrick Bourne has still not been out there. We saw him travel with the team to the Giants preseason game, but he has not been out there. So what is the injury? What's the extent of the injury? Is Kendrick Bourne going to eventually find himself on the injured reserve with the designation for a return? Or is this just games being played, roster manipulation by the Patriots because they know they're going to have to trade somebody? And Kendrick Bourne might be that guy. And maybe they feel like if they hold on to Kendrick Bourne just a little bit longer, it will make other teams believe, hey, the Patriots might actually bring 7 guys or 8 guys to week 1 at that position. Maybe we do actually have to give up a pick. The Patriots are sitting back saying, if you think we're not going to, take Kendrick Bourne seriously and we're just going to cut him willy-nilly, that's not what we're going to do. And you might think that, but no. So if you want him, you've got to trade an asset for him. It could be as simple as that. Maybe this just says this is the manipulation at that position for this roster because you want Kendrick Bourne to be traded for an asset. And so far, teams are waiting and waiting and waiting. And you want to call their bluff. I think it's obvious it's a vulnerable spot on this roster. I would not be surprised if 6 guys end up being on the roster for week 1 against the Raiders, and 2 of the guys that are currently on this roster are gone. I wouldn't be surprised if Kendrick Bourne is traded. I wouldn't be surprised if the team found somebody who could play the gunner and they say, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to release Javon Baker, and maybe he finds himself on the practice squad. None of that would surprise me at all. Speaking of surprises, I was surprised by this. It came out late in the day. Braden Swinson, your 5th-round pick out of LSU, teammate of Will Campbell. A lot of people talked about Swinson. A lot of people were excited about Swinson, that the Patriots were able to land him in the 5th round. Many came out. Many pundits said that Braden Swinson was a steal for the Pats in the 5th round. Well, Braden Swinson was cut. He did not make the initial 53-man roster. And when you look at Swinson, maybe you just say to yourself, yes, he has that ceiling as a pass rusher, but he doesn't have the overall game just yet. And we're looking at a position, defensive end. It was a stiff competition at defensive end and edge. It really was. Did we know that K'Lavon Chaisson was going to be as good as he was during this camp? No. Obvious making of the roster for him. And then you look at Elijah Ponder, undrafted free agent. And that's really the guy that I think you look at here, because Ponder's UDFA, Swinson, 5th round pick. And instead of just going with the guy that you drafted in the 5th round over the guy who is the UDFA, the Patriots picked the UDFA. And this is not surprising. Ponder was on my roster, my final roster that I put out there last Friday on the Everything Pats live stream. And after Mike Smith talked about Ponder, we had the conversations. As soon as I saw the positional coach ranting and raving about how great Ponder was, he was on this roster. So Ponder makes it. Swinson doesn't. Anthony Jennings makes the initial 53-man. I don't think the Patriots were getting the phone calls that they wanted about Jennings. And Jennings, frankly, is too good of a football player. He's a bona fide NFL guy. He might not be the perfect fit, but I don't think he's somebody just throw away. So Jennings makes it. And then Marte Mapu, who had a good game against the Giants, he makes it. Marte Mapu's on this team. And Mapu's interesting as a linebacker. That transition he's making, his ability to cover is, I think, important. Jelani Tavai, IR, designated for a return. Final surprise here. 6 safeties, and we're including Brendan Schooler because he can play safety. Kyle Duggar makes the initial 53. And that, to me, is not necessarily a surprise. The money, the fact that, he had a good game against the Giants to finish out his preseason. He has been very professional handling his situation, but mostly it's the money. If teams were willing to gobble up more of the cash that is guaranteed to Duggar, he's gone. I think he's traded. And Jeremy Fowler of ESPN reported just a little while ago saying, yeah, there were multiple offers, but the teams that the Patriots were speaking with about Duggar, they weren't willing to, take as much money back as the Patriots wanted them to. The teams that were looking to trade for Duggar wanted the Patriots to take most of his contract so they could get Duggar 25 cents on the dollar. And you might as well keep Duggar for now and see if that changes. Maybe somebody gets hurt. Maybe a team says, you know what, let's go get Duggar. The surprise to me was that not only Duggar making the roster, but also Del Pettis. And I did not think that Pettis would be on this roster if Duggar was on this roster because of the insurance that Schooler brings to this team, the depth of that position. So I'm surprised both guys made it. And that tells me that the coaching staff, the front office, they love Pettis. They love him enough to keep him on this 53. And if they truly believed in Duggar, I don't think both guys are on. So Pettis, he's on this roster because the front office and the coaching staff are just waiting for Duggar to move on somehow, some way. The Pats could go out and upgrade their roster in the next 24 hours. We will give you some interesting names next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner, and you can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching and drafting and building their championship squads. If you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, you should be playing Yahoo Fantasy football, and you should do that whether it's the first time you're ever playing or the millionth time you're playing, a true vet. With season kickoff on September 4th, now is the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. If you want more ways to play, try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team's left standing. Want to play instantly with friends? Try the new Draft with Friends mode. Prefer the classics? Get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. If you have no crew, no problem. Join a public league. That's the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Over here at Lockdown, we have an important request. Lockdown wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. And we can't say it enough, but thank you, truly thank you for helping us out. The Patriots are fourth on the waiver wire, just like a draft. So whoever's available, the Patriots have the fourth pick in essence. If the top three teams don't want anybody, the Patriots have the first priority, but they've got the fourth overall. And when you combine the fact that they are fourth on the waiver wire, and Mike Vrabel has said multiple times over the past several days that there are going to be changes made to this roster, you know what I'm expecting? Changes to be made to this roster. It just makes sense. They are going to add. They're going to go out and they're going to add. I don't know if they're going to be trades. I don't know if they're going to be waiver claims. I don't know if we're going to have both. But I would be absolutely stunned if there are zero moves over the next 36 to 48 hours by the Patriots front office. I would be stunned. So let me give you some names of guys that are available or could be available that I would be interested in. And we start with Cam Robinson, former offensive lineman of the Jaguars, former offensive lineman of the Minnesota Vikings, and he is reportedly available. Adam Schefter posted a name to watch, Texans left tackle Cam Robinson, who the team has discussed trading. Rookie Ariante Ursary, somebody we talked about during draft time, has impressed this summer and looks ready to man the Texans' left tackle position. I would be interested in Cam Robinson. I would even be willing to give up a 6th or 7th round pick if I had to. Marcus Bryant's been a great story during this camp, but he is a 7th round pick. He is seen as mostly a raw tackle prospect with some potential. If you read about Marcus Bryant's camp, and you listen to guys like Evan Lazar and Greg Bedard, guys that really study offensive line play, they will tell you that Bryant's pad level is uneven. There's things he has to work on. And right now, Bryant is your top reserve at offensive tackle, which to me is concerning. I love him as a developmental prospect. I wouldn't mind if he was your fourth or fifth tackle. But he right now is your top option if either Moses or Campbell goes down. We don't want that. At least speaking for myself, I don't want that. So is he ready? I'm not buying that he's ready day one. I would like for him to be in the oven a little bit longer. And then you've got Vidarian Lowe. And Lowe has been riddled with injuries the last couple of years. Can he stay healthy? And then when he's out there playing, he has been inconsistent. At times, Vidarian Lowe will show you that he can be a somewhat competent offensive tackle. But other times, he will be a complete disaster, losing focus, getting blown by. And so between Bryant, to me, maybe not being ready for prime time, so to speak, and Vidarian Lowe's injury and inconsistency history, I would love for the Patriots to find some offensive tackle insurance. And I'm not telling you Cam Robinson is the answer to all of the problems, but I do think to have somebody experienced who has played at a high level during his NFL career at times, to have him there as that insurance. And we know that the Patriots reportedly were interested in Cam Robinson. They did not want to offer him as much money as the Texans offered him. Maybe they go back now. Second bite of the apple. Doug Marrone was in Jacksonville when Cam Robinson was there and drafted. So Cam Robinson is a name I would be interested in. Somebody else that would draw my interest is Greg Dulcich. And you might remember the name because the Patriots just played Greg Dulcich and the Giants last week. Dulcich is one of those guys that you could look at and say, yeah, he'd be a fit as a tight end 3. We're not super comfortable with just Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper being our main guys here. Yes, Jack Westover made the roster. Do I think he is super secure? No, I do not. Would not be surprised if Jack Westover is somewhere else when the season kicks off against the Raiders. So Dulcich, to me, he's an interesting name. And he's somebody who is a move tight end. And we know that Josh McDaniels absolutely loves his move tight ends. So he can line up the inside. He can line up on the outside. You can line him up on the line of scrimmage, move him off. So maybe you can even play some games with Dulcich in the backfield. And so I think, to have that move tight end, somebody who before the draft process, Greg Dulcich was called a determined football player, yards after the catch, which means he doesn't like to go down, which means there's some innate toughness there in him, which I'm sure Mike Vrabel would love. Now, he's not a blocker, so that could be the problem. Because if you're looking for somebody who can play tight end and fullback and block a little bit, Dulcich is not that guy. But if you can't find the prototypical blocking tight end / fullback that Josh McDaniels might want, Dulcich would not be a bad option. He's an upgrade on Westover. You get him on the roster, and then you see how it unfolds. He had a very good preseason, scored a number of touchdowns. So he's a name I'm interested in. And he played for the Giants, as I just mentioned, and we all know that Brian Daboll, the offense that they run with the Giants, very similar to the Josh McDaniels offense that he ran forever with the Patriots. So I think there are a lot of similarities to how Dulcich could be used within the Patriots offense to how he was used with the Giants. Speaking of the Giants, how about Tommy DeVito? Hey, Tommy DeVito, not a bad idea. I could do that. I'm Italian. Joshua Dobbs' ball placement concerns me. Talked about it, the Kyle Williams injury, yada, yada. DeVito, experienced guy, completed 65.3% of his passes in the NFL, 1,358 yards, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, so does a decent job of taking care of the football. He's only 27 years old, and I just wax poetic about the Daboll offense, having that familiarity to it. So I think he's somebody that you can actually entertain bringing in. If you're not in love with Dobbs, you can bring him in, and I think 2 weeks would be good enough for him to know a decent chunk of the playbook and be able to do some things. So DeVito's a name I'm looking at. I'll give you 2 more names. Old friend Jakob Johnson was released. And I had this GIF of the Ultimate Warrior, right? That GIF. I used to call it GIF. My old co-host called it GIF. Now I call it GIF. I feel guilty if I don't call it GIF. Of Ultimate Warrior running down the aisle. I think it was SummerSlam. And I said, that's Josh McDaniels running down to Mike Vrabel's office at Gillette. You can follow me at Nick C Radio. Jakob Johnson's available, obvious fit, fullback. And another name I throw out there is a Chaz Surratt. Interesting guy. Linebacker, played most recently for the 49ers. His last preseason game, he had 10 tackles. He's agile. He's pretty good in coverage. So that's another name I might look at. We underestimated how much 2 terrible weekends resulted in disaster for this franchise. We will tell you why next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Check this out. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. $5. That bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And again, bet just $5. New customers, if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. It is clear that after the initial 53-man roster, the 2022 and 2024 NFL drafts set the Patriots back for years. I know we've talked about these drafts before, but I'm not sure if we truly appreciate how much of a disaster that those 2 drafts were. Because as we move forward with this initial 53-man, more guys from those drafts are no longer on the 53-man. And I just want to make sure that, before we can look at the rosy future, hopefully, fingers crossed, before we look at the brightness of the future, I want to revisit one more time the darkness of the past. Because the 2022 draft for the Patriots, and you might think this is going to be hyperbolic, but I promise you it's not. That 2022 Patriots draft is all-time terrible. Cole Strange, gone. Tyquan Thornton, gone. Although, made the initial 53-man in Kansas City. Congratulations, Tyquan. Marcus Jones, here. Jack Jones, Pierre Strong, Bailey Zappi, Kevin Harris, Sam Roberts, Chasen Hines, Andrew Stuber, all gone. One guy, one single solitary player from the 22 draft is still on your team only 3 years later. One guy. And that one guy, Marcus Jones, who we all love, he's fun to watch, but he is a punt returner and a slot cornerback who at times can play that nickelback position, but it really depends on matchup because he's not a big guy. And we've seen that play out. He had a tough time at joint practices against Minnesota because Minnesota was like, all right, we're just going to give you TJ Hawkinson. Good luck, Marcus. So he's fun, but he is an electric punt returner and a slot corner for the most part, depending on matchup. And that's the one guy that you got out of that entire draft. The Cole Strange pick, the Rams were literally laughing at you. A super reach. Many people believed, many pundits and experts and analysts believed that Strange should have been picked in like the 3rd or 4th round. And yes, sometimes those experts and analysts and pundits are wrong. And Bill Belichick had a number of guys that he could look back and say, oh, how do you like me now? Well, in this draft, Cole Strange didn't work out. And it really hurts when you look back at the 22 draft because the Patriots had 6 picks in the top 4 rounds. 6 picks in the top 4. They had, Strange, Thornton, Jones, and then in the 4th round, you had Jack Jones, Strong, and Zappi. I mean, 6 picks in the top 140, and you have 1 dude remaining. Brutal. Now let's look at 2024. Who's left from the 2024 draft? Well, Javon Baker is. Javon Baker is still on the team for now, not because he's been great at wide receiver, not because he's been making people stand up out of their wheelchairs as he once promised everybody, but because he's played gunner pretty well on special teams during the preseason against the 2s and 3s. So I would not write Javon Baker's name down in Sharpie as a guarantee by week 1. And I certainly would not write his name down in Sharpie as a guarantee by week 4, 5, or 6. He might get there, and it would be great if he did, but I would not be putting any kind of money on that. You've got Caden Wallace, the guy who played right tackle during his Penn State career, was drafted. We heard that he could slide to left tackle and is now playing left guard. And I'm not totally sold that Caden Wallace is on this team for the initial 53-man roster if you had any better options on the interior offensive line. So will Caden Wallace still be here by week 4? I would not put money on that. I would certainly put money on Drake May being here. So no notes for Drake May. But you have 3 guys that are left from the 24 draft. You had 8 picks. Now you could say, well, Marcellus Dial, who tore his ACL. Yes, Marcellus Dial would have likely made this team as a 6th corner and the gunner. However, if Dial was on the team, I think you take Baker off. So you'd still have 3 dudes. You would have had Wallace, May, and Dial instead of Wallace, May, and Baker. And I just want you to wrap your head around this. This is a stat that you want to tell your friends at the bar, over coffee, whatever. You're watching the first weekend of college football, the first true weekend of college football, and you tell your buddy, you know that out of the 2022 and 2024 NFL drafts, the Patriots, they still have only 4 players out of the 18 that they picked between those 2 drafts. The Patriots have 4 guys on this initial 53-man roster from the 18 they picked out of those 2 drafts. You want to talk about destroying your future? You want to talk about the absence of top-end talent? That's how you get there. You don't have a lot of top-end talent when you're drafting as bad as you did in the 2 out of 3 years, because you're going to be over-reliant on free agency, and a lot of times the best players are not hitting free agency. You want to talk about lack of depth? Why does this team have an utter lack of depth at multiple positions? Because of 2022 and 2024, those 2 drafts. That's why. Imagine if you could have 4 or 5 extra guys on this team to fill just depth. Just from a depth standpoint, you would feel much better. But hey, we can look forward, because maybe the draft in 2025, maybe that draft 4 months ago, maybe that was a turnaround. We feel really good about it. Hopefully we feel as good about the 25 draft a year from now as we do 4 months from that weekend. Man, still can't get over some of that. All right, that wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Reach out to me on Twitter at Nick C Radio. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up, that like button, and subscribe to us here at YouTube. And thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen, and for being an everydayer. For your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Football with hosts Vinny Iyer and Kate Maggiuk. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.